All right, everyone. Tonight is try number 2 for talking about the Surface Deployment Accelerator. This is a kit from Microsoft that would allow you to create an updated WIM for deploying surfaces. Now, this actually will also work without requiring, it works for other devices too besides just surfaces, but it was designed for surfaces and makes it really easy for you to inject drivers for this. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick demo here. I'm going to start from scratch, so let me go ahead and just delete what I've got already from my last attempt. So we're going to go out here to, so it's on GitHub, Microsoft Surface Deployment Accelerator, and there will be links and things after the video that I will update with. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to download this. We're going to download the zip file. Right, we're going to go and find this thing. All right, so the first thing you want to do before you do anything else is open the properties, click on block, click OK. If you don't do that, you will run into problems. Now, I'm going to put this on, I have a solid state drive on my computer here that I want to use. I've got 168 gigs free, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that drive. And I'm going to delete the one from yesterday. Go ahead and paste this into here. All right, there we go. So now we have the contents of the GitHub library. And basically this script here is the magic sauce, but it requires these other files as well. So we're gonna go ahead and open. I've already opened an elevated PowerShell ISE, and we're gonna go then to that actual directory. So let's go ahead and Surface Master, and then let's see, what was the name of that script? Create Surface Windows image. Create. All right, and now you can see there are a lot of options here. So we've got ISO, which will create an ISO, your OS SKU. So this will be like enterprise, education, and so on and so forth. The different index, basically. A destination folder where we want it to build the output architecture. We're gonna go through .NET 3.5. So this is like enabling the NetFX inside of your image. The servicing stack, and then different updates. You can actually have it download and stage Office 365 in it. I'm going to skip that because that takes a little extra time for the download. Device, this is where you can actually pick the surface model. I leave this off because I'm not deploying surfaces, but I'm still going to use this for my demos. Basically create a generic one. You can have it then create a USB. So on this computer, if I had a USB flash drive connected, it would build bootable media for you. So you could take this then and plug it into a Surface device and boot up off of this and install your custom image. And same for an ISO. It would create an ISO. The window, it does require the Windows ADK, and it will install it for you if you want to. All right, so let's go ahead. Now I've actually saved the commands I want to use. Let's see. So here I have it going to the ISO. I've already downloaded the 1909 media from the Volume Licensing Center, and then so I have it pointing at the ISO there. And then the destination folder, I'm just gonna say just use SDA build. That's what I'm gonna choose to use. I thought, you know, it made sense to me. The SKU, I wanted to use enterprise SKU. I don't need any of the indexes. And then I wanted to add all these different patches, so I'm putting true. Architecture x64. So some of these things when you run it. So let me go back to this and type. So Surface, it's nice because like if you do architecture here, it actually gives you the ones to use. So of course I just use x64. where I wish it had the options for like skew. I wasn't sure what it was supposed to be. So this was trial and error. The first run I ran before it aired out, and it said it couldn't find the one I was looking for. I'm like, okay. Anyway, I eventually figured it out, and to use the right skew. And then the rest of these, I would typically, instead of just leaving them off, I'd put them in there, and then I would put true or false. So for instance, like office here, I'm putting false, create USB false, and create ISO true. And then we'll look at that at the end here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click run on here. And what will happen now is this will take and run for about an hour. My last couple runs have been between 50 and 55 minutes. Now, if I had it running on an NVMe, it might be slightly faster than just the SATA drive. So right now, you can see it found my ISO of 1909. It's going ahead and mounting that, and it's going to look for the install WIM. And then it knows here, it actually knows the build of the WIM. That was the install.wim. And so now it's going ahead and mounting that WIM, and it's going to start the process there. Back over here, we can see it has started to already build out. So it created this folder, and it creates this nice little log here. And the beauty of it is it's actually in the format that CMTrace likes, so that it comes up nicely in here instead of all gross like or you'd have to open it in Notepad. But this is really handy. It goes through and keeps everything documented quite well, so that you'd have this for auditing or for your change management. All right, so let's go ahead and see where we're at. All right, it's mounting. So here in a moment, you'll get to see a couple more things. The first time I ran it, I was a little confused by what was happening. But then as it continued, it made sense here. So once this actually mounts, I'll explain a couple things here. In the meantime, I'm going to open this actual script and take a look. So they've done pretty nice for keeping notes and the different things that have changed over the versions. And all right, so let's see here. Now it's mounting. It's mounted successfully, and it is unmounting, dismounting. So let's see here. What did it do? Check it. So during this process, you'll see it mounting and unmounting a couple times here, and it will actually touch the WinRE and the WinPE as well. So it does take a little bit of time here. I mean, it takes about that hour. Anyway, so up here in the script, you can see that they have pretty good notes as how to use it and what has changed. What I like about it is all these different functions. I went through here recently and just kind of looked at the functions. So like write log is the function that is creating the log file in the format that CMTrace likes. So you can see here the different parameters with the different log level, the log path, and see, you can see if you ever open like CMTrace log in Notepad, it will look very similar to this, where you see like all the different open brackets, log, and all that kind of thing. So this is a nice function if you want to start adding logging into your own scripts and you want it to look nice and readable in CM Trace. You can go ahead and steal these different functions and start leveraging them. So let's just do a quick find, and let's see. So for instance, an example is calling that function dash message, and then so whatever information will be in this variable, and then the log level, which would be like 1 through 4, and then the path, and then the script number. This is custom, which is kind of interesting that they're adding a number, which actually really is kind of cool because it makes troubleshooting all the easier. So in here, you can see, I've never actually seen this before, so it's kind of a cool idea. It shows you when it's running which line in the script. So for instance, this is line 413. Now I'm hoping this isn't going to make a liar out of me here. So let's go ahead and look at 413. Using bits to download files, and in the log, that is what it is. So this makes troubleshooting the script really nice, because it will actually point you to the line in the script that ran. So kudos to Carl, who I think actually wrote this, for doing that, and that is definitely something that I'm going to steal as I write functions in the future, and scripts. But there's a lot of other really great functions in here that I will probably look at too, just because why reinvent them for myself. So if you're into PowerShell coding, and or you're just kind of learning, I've only been doing it for a couple of years myself, and I'm still learning a lot. So just looking at scripts like this that are very well written, I find are very helpful. And sometimes you can get ideas for other things. Like, so this here, I was looking at the other day too, and I found this interesting because I have a script that does something very similar to this, but he went one step further and actually downloads the Office Deployment Toolkit, ODT, extracts that, so he's always got the latest setup to use in downloading. So he's using, I was like, oh, where's he getting that? So this here little stub, which I didn't know was a thing. Let's go over here, paste that guy in. As you can see down here, it's downloaded the Office Deployment Toolkit, and I'm sure it's always the latest one that it forwarded it to. So then what he's doing here is he's downloading that, and then he's extracting that, and then he runs the commands to download the full Office setup, the offline setup files that he needs for the click to run, which is pretty cool. Out on my GitHub, I've got something very similar, where it's what I use to keep my M365 applications in ConfigMgr always updated every month. I just run it monthly. It pulls down the latest bits based upon my download XML, but I have to manually check for that latest setup file, which does actually change quite a bit. So if I stole this code here, I could just use his to get the latest version of the setup, and then I could just swap out his XML with my XML and get what I want. Anyway, that's why I love looking at other people's projects in the communities, because not only is it a great resource, but it might spin off ideas to improve something you're already doing, or go ahead and create a new idea of something that you'd want to do. So there's some other cool functions, like, so this one here is pulling the OS from the ISO, you know, and then adding packages into the Windows image. It's definitely worth looking through all these different things that are in the script. All right, so let's go ahead back down here and just see where we're at. All right, so it mounted, and then saved it. So here you can see it's actually saved a temp WIM. So the reason that it did this was to avoid making modifications to the original WIM. So it copied the install WIM from the ISO into, well, let's just go and look. It copied it over source WIM. So here's the source WIM from the media. As you can see, it was from May of 2020, and the original boot WIM. And then over here in temp is where it is actually downloading all the different things that it's going to put in there. And this is also where the temp WIM is that it is building along the way. And then eventually all of the output will be here in this x64 folder. So that's what it does. It creates a temp WIM that it is and that's the one that's being modified, and it leaves the original one alone, so that you could do another run in the future if you like. But so you can see here, it is the May bits. The 836 is much newer than the initial release, but it's still not as current as we would like it to be. All right, so this will actually run for quite a bit longer. So we're going to cheat because I've actually already built it once before, and we're going to cut to the next phase here. So let me go ahead and switch over to the ConfigMgr server. All right, so now we are over on the ConfigMgr server, and let's go ahead and do this. All right, so CM. Okay, so under operating system images, so what I did already to save myself a little bit of time is on my source server I made a folder under 1909 just called SDA, and I copied the output. So you can see when this completes, the WIM is actually going to be a couple gigs larger than when it started, with all the patches and everything else that it did to this WIM. Alright, so then I copied it over here to my source server, and then I went ahead and imported it and distributed it so that you wouldn't have to sit through that painstaking time either. So it did fully patch. So this 1909 was a build that I ran right after Patch Tuesday with OSD Builder. And you can see the patch level is 1316, and it's still the same month and no new patches have come out. So when the Surface Deployment Accelerator built it, it's got the same patch level. So then for testing, I went ahead and created a new task sequence. All I did was go through the wizard and just click the standard steps. So you can see here there's nothing out of the ordinary. I added a restart computer step here, and I disabled the apply drivers because this will just be in HyperV. But here under apply operating systems, all I did was choose the image that I imported. So everything is complete native, no customization, because all I want to do is confirm that this image works. Alright, so what I did then was I deployed that default task sequence to my OSD available. Now we need to head back over to my HyperV server. So just give me a moment here while I do that. Alright, back on my HyperV server. We're going to use this guy. So I'm going to go ahead and make this pixie boot. And then we will choose that task sequence. And then you can see how this goes. In the meantime, we can continue watching how the progress of OSD Builder, or as the Surface Deployment Accelerator is doing. And all right, so this is running. And if you have any questions, I will pop back and forth. I only have one screen, I'm on my laptop. But if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, and I will try to answer those for you. Alright, and in the meantime, I will also go ahead and put the link to that in the chat. Alright. Alright, let's see here. Number 2. Alright, we're getting close. I recently set up Pixie because I was changing my boot media so often that it was really annoying to constantly be updating my boot media or my boot ISO because I've been playing a lot with different community tools and customizing my boot image, so it was getting really painful. So I set up Pixie so that it's just always my latest one. Alright, so here's the default TS that I just created last night. And I've attached the media that we just built, or I built last night, that we're making a duplicate of right now. And so let me go ahead and close that again. We can keep monitoring that on the side. But here you can see that it actually started adding some updates into it. It enabled the framework for 3.5 and the servicing stack. And one thing that I've noticed, so here we can see it's actually downloading that custom install WIM that we created, and that's going quite fast, which is nice. Oh yeah. So one thing that I noticed about this that most don't do is for .NET, no, not .NET. Oh, here we go. It actually is downloading and applying these files, the optional package files for the .NET on demand. Which is pretty slick, so you don't have to grab those from other media. And then it also grabs the visual runtimes. Now this, I'm unsure how this actually works because we're not, like, you can't run an installer offline. So once our image is done, we can log in and see exactly what that did. We could also probably look at the script to figure that out as well. So let's see here. Temp folder. Well, where is the temp folder? Alright, well, that's good. Let's see. So test path. So it's just copying them. But where? If test path. So this is what I do in all my spare time. I just look over things, troubleshoot things, and this is how I learn. If architecture is that, copy to image mount folder. Okay, so it's copying all those things to Windows Temp VC runtimes so that they are there for you on your image. So once it's done building, we will go ahead and look at that and see what's in there. I'm assuming that is where it's also putting the Office files so that those would be available. So what's cool is during OSD you could have a step that references this folder then and just have it install So all you need is a run command line, and you wouldn't actually have to download any additional content because it'll all be bundled up in your WIM. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that idea. I prefer my WIM to be as small as possible for distribution, but it works. And if you're doing everything, if you're doing all of your imaging in a place that has a high-speed link, and especially if this is something you're going to put on every image anyway, then I guess it's not a huge deal. It just depends on how you want to maintain that. Alright, so over here it is still applying. And so that will be a couple minutes. Alright, what is going on over here now? Applied servicing stack, save that, it's mounting. So now it's doing the CU, which I would imagine will actually take a fair bit of time to apply the latest CU to the image. Or not to the image, to the WIM. Alright. Let me go back here. No questions yet. Okay. So, interesting story. The first couple times I tried to run this, it did not succeed. It would get hung up on the please wait screen, I think that's what it says, or preparing or something, on that like light bluish screen with the little circles after the first reboot. But I was running the task sequence in debug mode, and as soon as I disabled debug mode, it worked fine. So I don't know if there's a bug in the debug mode, but I was starting to lose my mind a little bit. So I was starting to blame the media creation process for not working, when it was just, for whatever reason, having the debugger enabled during the task sequence was having it flip out and not run properly. Alright, so this is going, and it's applying, and so since we're here, if in your own labs, I highly recommend running HyperV. It's really slick. This is actually a fairly low-end box that I have here. I am running a $100 processor, a Ryzen 5 1600 6-core, and even with everything I'm throwing at it, it is doing just fine. So I'm running my entire lab on here. So you can see I have my CM server, I have my DC. I've been playing with setting up a VPN, but I also have an MBAM server on here, and then the Recast server, and then I actually have a workstation that is not on my domain, but is connected to a domain at work, and that is managed by a different infrastructure. This is my CMG client for testing from a different domain, but I just have it located at my house because it basically represents a computer on the internet, and so that's what I'm doing there. But then I also have several workstations, and then I have two workstations that are using physical disks. One that is using a spinning drive, and one that is using a solid state. So let me show you that, because for a long time VMs didn't support BitLocker, so the only way to get full disk encryption with BitLocker was to actually having it run on its own physical disk. So that's exactly what I did here. Is I have a couple extra physical disks that are not used by the host but are passed through to VMs, so that I could run encryption and other things on. So I've then just labeled those in ways so that I remember which one is which. And the rest of these here are just purely test machines. Then I've got my old box, which is about 8 years old, with 32 gigs of RAM. This is an old i7, like 3rd gen. And I just keep a ton of machines running for imaging, patching, just to keep my lab with a little bit more data. But my main server, I've got 64 gigs of RAM and a $100 processor, and it's been running fine. Let's see here how these things are running. Alright, oh, so that's cool. That one is doing its first reboot now. It got through the apply Windows settings and apply network settings and started the setup Windows and ConfigMgr step, and is now on its first restart. So this is moving along nicely. This will probably be done before building the new WIM is done. So at this point, the machine is running the mini setup. It would be applying drivers that are in the Windows store, or the Windows driver store, making sure it's got the best drivers available. And then it would be running the out-of-box experience here pretty soon, but it would also be joining the domain at this time. Basically, it'd be going through your unattend.xml and doing what that told it to do. So this takes a little bit of time. And I don't know if you noticed, but I don't specify an unattend.xml. I just let ConfigMgr build one for me, and that's working quite nicely. While we wait, all this documentation and this video will be posted out on our Recast doc site. So from here we can go to resources, we can go to documentation, and then once this loads, the ConfigMgr doc section is what I'm building out here at Recast. We are trying to help the community as much as possible and do a brain dump of all the different things that we've learned. And so this is basically just a huge wiki of tons of deep dives of information. But what I'm working on for Recast, what we're doing now is building out a bunch of community things. So you can see this Microsoft Surface Deployment Accelerator link. This is I've not working, and I can see why, so I need to fix that. But that page will be the page that has all the information about what we're talking about right now. In the meantime, let's go back here and let's open that back up. And on the side, I'm going to fix that link real quick and push that fix out there. Save all. Let's go ahead and commit that fix quick. You're getting to see, I'm not showing you, but you can see this fixed real time here. Let's fix that. And we're going to push that to commit. Alright, just a moment. So this is the screen that I got stuck on when I had the debugger enabled. It would literally sit here for an hour until I gave up, and so I did it again, and it kept going. So late last night, around 12:30 or so, I said, heck with it, I will just look at it in the morning, and it was still doing this in the morning. So I really hope I didn't mess something up, and I hope this demo goes well, and this will only be a few minutes instead of not working. Alright, so let's see. That is still going. This progress bar is kind of nice. You can use that progress bar to kind of gauge how much time you have. Go get yourself some ice cream or a treat. You can definitely make yourself a pot of coffee during the time it is applying the CU. So you can, if you're doing this at work, it's kind of nice because you can go ahead and kick this off and then walk away. Or, as you saw how easy this was, you could easily take this script, make it a scheduled task on your server, and have it run. And every month you'll have your updated media, and you can then go ahead and import it into CM, or you could script all that too, which is what I've done in my personal lab. I've scripted the entire monthly build process, so I automatically have the latest builds. And I did that with OSD Builder, but that isn't the demo today. So we're going through this tool. So my thoughts on this tool are, it's really cool. The script is cool, worth looking at. You can learn a lot from it. If you already are using ConfigMgr, I personally don't see a whole lot more that this will get you if you're not using Surface devices. If you're using MDT or you don't have any solution, this is great because it will build you the latest image basically that you can then send out with a USB stick, and you then could customize a few more things where you would actually on the first install Office and a few more things like that. So you could actually turn this into a pseudo imaging tool for surfaces if you don't have anything in your organization, or maybe you're 100% cloud-based, you're using Intune only, you don't have CM or MDT set up, and you're using like Surface devices for your end users in their homes, and someone has a problem, you could send them a USB flash drive, they could boot off of it, and it would reimage their device with what you've just created. And then you could have them go ahead and reconnect back up to Intune or re-enroll through whatever email or whatever means you're sending out. There's probably even more elegant ways. I know on the GitHub page someone put in a request for like some autopilot enhancements. So anyway, if you have nothing, this is wonderful. If you have CM, you'd have to debate like, do I want to use this or do I want to just use the built-in native servicing features? And where this is really handy is if you could automate some of the other things, like you could automate downloading the C+ runtimes and Office and things like that, so that when you're running your OSD, you always have the latest version. All right, so let's see, we still got a few minutes. Let's move this over here so we can see that part of the bar. And that blue screen is gone, which makes me feel better. Means this is probably going to work. So my demo tonight is going far better than it went last night. So if you're the same person that was on last night, I apologize. But hopefully tonight has been a whole lot better for you. So we're coming up close here to finishing up this demo, I believe. Just have to wait for this to finish imaging. And I would imagine any moment it will give me a login screen, and then we'll just have to wait for the first logon time, as we also wait in the background to see how this is running. Another nice thing about the script is it's actually keeping track of the time. So then at the very end, it will actually tell you how long it ran. So, all right, here we are, just a minute again. Oh, just a moment, I mean. We're getting close, just a moment. Not a huge fan of just a moment when it really gives you no indication of how long. Oh, this is nice, we're so super close now. But they have some important setup to do, so just hold on. It's coming. Important things are happening.
You should tell them a fun story.
And here we are. We're in a cave now, looking out at much warmer weather than I. It's almost like a slap in the face for me who lives in Minnesota, with negative 10 degrees outside. So thank you, Microsoft. Thank you very much. All right, let me go ahead, log in here for the first time. Yep. So I'm assuming my viewership is low right now because I'm doing this during the Super Bowl. I'm sure there'd be a ton more people watching right now otherwise. But for whoever's out there watching, thank you.
You should tell them what Abby said. Someone said, "Are we watching Super Bowl today?"
Yeah. My daughter today was asking if we were watching the Super Bowl.
Somebody said Super Bowl.
And
what's a Super Bowl?
Someone brought up that there was a Super Bowl today, and I was like, no, that is no place in our home. So we are not watching the Super Bowl. To me, that would be painful. So I would much rather be doing this, watching progress bars and PowerShell, than watching football. And now I might have just lost some viewers saying that. I have no ill will towards anybody who enjoys that. In fact, I have friends that like football. Like, I can bridge that gap. But I just, if I have to choose between football and pretty much anything, it's going to be almost something else every time. But given the right circumstances, like, pizza, I might tolerate watching football for a few minutes. But still hasn't finished logging in. Oh, there it has. All right, good. So I can be done with my story. Oh, right. Oh, hey, and look at that. Several things happened all at the same time. It finished installing that update. Here it failed installing drivers because, well, I didn't specify a Surface device. And I also don't need any drivers added because I just want a generic image. Here you can see too, it added the VC++, the Visual Studio, or the C++ runtimes to interesting to that location. So I'm gonna have to check that out here and see how that is. Let's go ahead and, well, first I'm going to show you one thing that I thought was kind of neat. We're going to open the registry here. Yep. Okay. We are going to go to HKey local machines, software, Microsoft, Surface, and SDA. And let's see here. And I can zoom in and make this a little bit easier to see. Let's go 200%. All right. So you can see here that they actually stamp quite a few things into the registry as to what was done on this image, which is something that I also like to do on my images, is kind of like stamp what build and some of the other things that were applied to it. So that way you can keep track of drift, or if an image 1 month machines are having issues, you can go back and see what was the difference between this one and the month before. This spot would have it for you. So it's going to tell you what was the build at the time of deployment, and it will tell you the version of the script, and in case there's a change, you can download a newer one, run it, along with all the different patches that were applied. And I'm sorry, this should be resolved in a matter of a couple seconds. It should reconnect now. There we go. Okay. And so this is really handy for that. It keeps track of what was applied, and the device is custom. It doesn't say Surface because, well, we didn't specify. So that's kind of nice. Now let's see if we can find those runtime files here. So I'm going to just guess C Windows 10 version, sure. Hey, look at that. There's the runtimes. So you could, if you were using like a task sequence or another means, you could then trigger these installs. Let's go ahead and control panel. Let's take a look here, uninstall. So it has these installed, which would be installed due to the ConfigMgr client being installed and not because of this per se. But I am curious if these are the exact same versions or if one is newer than the other. Let's see, for giggles, let's take a look here. And there's 40664, 40660. Alright, so ConfigMgr is installing a slightly older version than what SDA just downloaded and pulled in. So that's kind of cool. You could update that if you wanted. But anyway, so that's what it looks like when it's done. And as you saw, the task sequence did no other customization. So this is 100% what is in that WIM and applied. Now, you can do other modifications to that WIM. You know, you could add in other things to the script where you could pull out some of these applications. That was not something by default that they added the ability to do. And so if you have requirements above what we just did here, you'd want to look at using a different community tool like WimWitch or OSD Builder to make those different tasks easier for adding different drivers or removing different Apex packages or setting registry values. You can pretty much do any of those with those tools, which is really nice. But this is a simple way to get started as well, especially if you're using Surface devices. So let's go back here, and we are getting really close to finishing this build process. All right, so it's doing the cleanup. After it applied that patch, it did cleanup, which took not too long. Created some logs here. Exporting to WinRE. Now it is saving the install.wim. Let's go back over here to here. All right. So temp WinRE, temp install. So it should be updating that right now. And it shouldn't be dismounting as it's building. It might take a few minutes here. So any questions? There's nothing new in the chat. So, let's head back over here. Well, since we're waiting here for another minute, I'll just continue to talk about my lab build here. So on my actual HyperV host that I use for my lab, I've got quite a few drives, as you can see. My C drive is only this full because I use it for OSD Builder as well. D drive I keep. Actually, this is where I'm running my CM server out of and my domain controller, which maybe it wasn't the best idea to run this on the same box because that has my database and everything for CM on it. Probably should have put it over here on like my NVMe that doesn't have as much stuff, or like this one, which is almost completely empty. So on my NVMe's, I like to keep some of the images, some of the machines that I reimage quite frequently, just because I found that I get pretty good performance reimaging these on these NVMe drives. I'm using basically all Samsung drives, and then I have got one USB C drive which I use to make backups and copy things. But let me show you, in case you're curious, those drives that are used. So you can see here I've got 2 drives that are offline, but yet they look like they have all the correct partitioning for computers, and that is because they do. These were the computers that disk 3 and 5, if you remember, are these guys. So for instance, this HyperV machine, the physical drive 5 is used, and so that is this here one here, which is then partitioned like a normal computer, and it's offline to the host, and that is how then the virtual machine then has it online and uses it. But I found that to be actually pretty nice for doing other tests where it's nice to have a physical drive versus just a virtual file for your drive. Let's take a look. Yeah, still getting there. So that was a successful test, but you know, I want to get that reset back up with my normal image. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as we're looking to kill some time. And reset. Keep watching that bar, make sure we don't miss the magic when that happens. There we go. Getting close. Okay. Yep, so in my boot image I also have a custom background, and I just felt that was a nice touch. I'm going to go ahead and use my normal corporate image to get this machine back to the place I like that has BitLocker, Lapse, and everything else installed. Alright, so we're just going to let that image for a while we wait for this. Which will feel like it's taking forever. So, alright, once again, we are working on the Surface Deployment Toolkit. No, Surface Deployment Accelerator. And, you know, I highly recommend reading through this. It goes through some of the prereqs that are needed. Talks about making sure you check that unblock box that I showed you in the beginning. And you need a Windows 10 2004 or newer environment to run the script, which I feel like is not true, since I am running it on a server that is definitely not 2004 or newer. But I do have the 2004 80K, so maybe that is what is saving me. I know I did this before in the past on a VM just for testing, and this is also true. If you logged in, you got to make sure that you've opened IE at least once, for some of the internet connection portions to work properly. But down here it has a good how-to, and then it also, when I was first trying to learn how to use it, I went through and read this full parameter documentation, and it's like a page long, so it doesn't really hurt you all to read this, and it will explain every one of the parameters with a slightly more detail than I did. So some of these things you can see, like true is the default, so if you do not put them in, it will apply these different updates. But because I'm visual, I put them in and I set them to true anyway, even though that true is the default, because I just like to see that it's going to be doing that. See, whereas like Office, I did not want it to download, and so I set that to false. But it would actually be interesting to go ahead and change that to true and see what happens, because I'm very curious how it says and install, and I'm not sure how he made this install offline. So I'd actually like to, on a future test, set that to true, run it, and see how that works, and then dig through his code to see exactly what he's doing. Same with I am nowhere near the machine I'm building them on, and so the first time I didn't set this, and it prompted for a USB, and I said, well, that's not happening. So then it just errored on me. This is kind of cool. You can, so what's going to happen is it's going to check for your ADK, and if it doesn't have one, it's going to put it there. So what this option does is saying if you don't have one, you can override the default location. You can't say don't put it there or don't install it. It has to install it for the script to work, but it gives you the option of putting it somewhere besides the default. Now for me, I always put it in the default, just because that's where other things are looking for it too. So you might have a legit reason for not putting it there, but I just found, like, if the software wants to put itself somewhere, just let it go. Boot WIM. This can stop a boot WIM from being updated. I've just let these things go. Keep original WIM is true by default. This is why we see it in that source folder. You could put it to false and then it wouldn't bother. Keep the original WIM. Yeah, and once it actually gets to this point, I just wish this were faster, so I wouldn't have to keep talking so much until it gets done. But what happens is, if it's more than 4 gigs, it uses the SWM format, and it cuts it into smaller chunks so that you can copy it onto like flash drives that have that 4 gig limit for the file size. So it's actually kind of handy that it does that for you without having to manually do that. And if you want to inject your own drivers, you can definitely do that. But since I do all my tests on HyperV, I don't bother. And also because I use a task sequence, so I'd rather just manage my drivers through the task sequence. Now recently I did hear of some people who have Dell devices, and they were having problems with their storage drivers. So it only worked when they injected the storage drivers into the actual WIM, and instead of doing it during deployment. I don't actually understand how that makes any difference, because you're still injecting it in the WIM offline beforehand. But for some reason they said that that worked. So kudos to them. And I wish I actually had one of those machines myself so I could test and figure out what was actually going on. But so that is this project, and pretty slick. Give me a second now. I wonder who's winning that Super Bowl. I'm sure I will find out at work whether I want to or not. Oh, look at that. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. We should be done here in just a minute. It seems to really be cruising now. Cruising, I said. Cruising now. Ah. See, told you. Cruising. Alright. So it exported that. Exporting it now. Let's go and look at our folder. Let's look at that. Look at that temp thing. It's all done. Let's see how big this thing is. 6 gig. 6 gig. Oi, that's big. Let's look at the original one. 4.3. So just doing those modifications was like, what is that, like 30% larger? It's crazy. Just crazy. All right, it's exporting. All right, well, it exported it slightly smaller, 5.4. So I guess it's not as bad, 5.5, so we're only up a little bit over 1, but still, that's like 20% larger. All right, so here you can see it is splitting it out. So if you wanted to, put it on a flash drive, that is definitely in the cards. Let's see here. So it's done doing things to the actual main installer. Now it's updating the boot.wim file. Now, this was once again something that you could have skipped if you're not going to use it, which I am not going to be using it, but it's cool to know that you could. And this might actually be beneficial in if you're going to be scripting any of your WinPE stuff for adding additional things. So this is what's nice here is you can see it's actually adding a bunch of components into the base WinPE. So it's adding the PowerShell scripting, it's adding enhanced storage, BitLocker support, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that you would typically do in ConfigMgr on your boot media. So this is kind of replicating that same thing that you would be doing in ConfigMgr so that WinPE is more useful. .NET's definitely the biggest thing it has to add into here is PowerShell and several other things all rely on .NET to give you the functionality. So there we go. Couple more things here. Adding PowerShell. Storage. And we should be coming up to the end here in a moment. Just about. I'd imagine this would be pretty quick. It's not too large. remember, if anyone does have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Go ahead and throw them in the chat. We're getting close here to the end, and I'll be wrapping this up. So just as a recap, what we've done is we ran for the Surface Deployment Accelerator, we ran the create Surface Windows image script, which is a little bit misleading in the fact that it has the word surface in there, because you can, and how I'm using it is for not for surfaces. But that's probably how they got funding to make it, was yeah, it's for surfaces. So, and then this was the command that we ran, and it's been running for the last 45-50 minutes, and building us an updated WIM, which is right here. And you can see now it just made the boot image, which is about 400 meg-ish, and we should be getting really close. Image modification, look at that, here we are. So this is actually the longest run so far, 1 hour and 27 seconds. And with that, let's go take a double look at what we all get from this. So it built it in the folder that I specified, and then in the SKU, and then in the Windows build, and then in the architecture. So that way, if you were to build other ones like education, it would be SDA build education, and so on and so forth. So that way you can keep track of different OSs, different architectures, and it builds a nice structure. So then when we're done here, we'll have the original WIM, we'll have all the things that were downloaded and applied to it. So like, these are the files that were needed to create the ISO. So here, for instance, is the different files. And actually, let's take a look to see what it's doing here. So it's setting up, I'm assuming this is the power, setting the high performance. And it's going ahead and running the PowerShell script. So let's take a look at this guy. So this is pretty slick. So this will actually then go ahead and kick off the imaging process, apply your WIM, and do several other things. So let's get down to, okay, begin script processing. All right, so this is checking the drive. It's getting some hardware information about the machine. It is then running, getting information about the drive. It is running disk part. And let's go ahead and quick look at those disk part. Okay, not a whole lot there. That looks better. And here it is actually partitioning it for your machine. And setting the actual correct ID for recovery. That's pretty slick, actually. Alright, let's head back over to the script that it built. And finding for each drive, it goes through. And let's see, WIM found. If it's found, from scratch, it goes ahead and applies the WIM to the machine. System partition bootable. So this is basically a very light version of MDT, which is pretty slick. So it goes ahead and does that and makes it bootable. And copies the WinRE to recovery. And then prompts for restart. So basically, yeah, you boot to this flash drive that it be creating, and you just follow the prompts, and when you're done, you have a fully imaged machine, all using PowerShell. So it's definitely worth taking a look at what this tool does and creates. You'll learn quite a bit about imaging and Windows in general. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap this up. And just a reminder, this is another one of the demos we're doing for the Recast software community portal, which we will have out here. And please feel free to take a look. If you have anything else that you think should be added or you'd like to have me write up about, go ahead and find me on Twitter, and I'll be happy to continue to do some more demos of the different tools that are out here. Let's see if this is working now. Hey, look at that. Fix during demo. So I will add, once this video is done, I will add it to here. But this is basically snapshots of everything that we just went through. So if there are certain parts of the demo that you wanted to look back at and leave up, you can easily do that and see exactly what we talked about here on the video. So thanks for joining me. Have a great night. And if you're watching the game on the side with some friends, hope you're enjoying that too. Have a great night.